it's fun.
I'd like to bring our meeting to order. Welcome everyone. Big crowd tonight. And we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could remove your hats. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I'll hear a motion for approval of the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second that.
It's moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we will move straight into some of the presentations, and we have Forestburg Charter School. Mary Jensen's here. And I'm not certain, is Jennifer? Welcome.
Do I go to the podium this time?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Hello, board members of LPOSD. How are you guys doing?
Good, thanks.
Every year, Forestburg Charter School needs to give a report to the board on how our financials are, how our ISATs are doing, and answer any questions. So this year, thankfully, I don't have to do a long presentation, yay, because it's just going to get streamlined. I sent all the materials in early. They were in your packets, and I was wondering if you had any questions on it.
Do any of the trustees have questions for Sharon?
I do not.
I appreciate having it all in our packets and giving us an opportunity to look at it beforehand. That was a great plan.
Yes.
And so remind me our approval of their.
So point of reference, Chair, is that you only approve them on authorization years, and that is every 3 years.
Right, it's next year. 3 to 5 years, depending on how the board wants to see it.
Gotcha. So there you go, point of reference for that. So we're not actively approving anything this time, but thank you for the update and the ongoing report from Charter School. And I hear good things all the time.
Oh, well, thank you. Okay, no questions?
No other questions?
Oh, well, thank
Well,
you
that
guys.
was your
This is so
shortest-
awesome.
Your shortest report ever.
It's like everybody's afraid of doing presentations. This is amazing. Thank you.
You did a great job.
We're not that much. No. We have the Kootenai Elementary students, and I actually intended to have them lead the Pledge of Allegiance, so I know you all know it better than I do even, so next time.
Next time.
Yes. Welcome.
All right. Thank you all for coming this evening. I'm Kelly Knowles. I'm the principal at Kootenai Elementary, and I am here to present our Kootenai Elementary weather team. We have Gabby Thomas, Lila Freeman, Ryder Wad, and Eli Perry. Take it away. Oh, before they present to you on what the weather team is exactly, we're going to show you an example of our weekly forecast. We have video announcements at Kootenai Elementary, and this is an example of one of our weather forecasts.
Hi, this is the K2 weather team. And this is our 5-day forecast. On Monday, there will be some snow in the AM. Our high is 38 and our low is 37. Tuesday, it's rain and snow. The high is 41, the low is 35. And on Wednesday, we will also have some rain and snow. The high is 40 and the low is 30. Thursday, we have mostly cloudy. The high is 38 and the low is 27. And on Friday, it will be mostly cloudy as well. The high is 38 and the low is 29.
Oh, and for the national weather, Montana has an average of 44, and New York has an average of 56, and for Texas it has an average of 68. That's hot.
And this is our joke for the day. Why do hamburgers fly south for the winter? so they don't freeze their buns. This is the KT Weather Team signing off.
That's good.
Excellent.
The history of the KT Weather Team. This is the first year of the Kootenai Weather Team.
It was created to encourage student voice in our daily video announcements.
These 4 students were chosen from 45 applicants in grades 4 through 6.
We were chosen because of our clever answers on our applications.
Miss Knowles felt we were creative and presented ourselves well in writing. Miss Knowles also knew we were great students and could miss class twice a week to prepare and film the forecast.
I'm the producer. I film and give feedback to Gabby, Lila, and Eli.
Me and Milo research and present the daily forecast and the weekly joke.
I am our comic relief, and I also report on our national weather.
What is the KT Weather Team? The KT Weather Team is a group of 4 students in 5th and 6th grade.
We meet twice a week. On day 1, we gather weather information such as the high and low temperatures for the coming week.
We also find a funny weather joke that is related to the current weather conditions.
We enter our forecast into a Google slideshow so that we introduce a visual forecast. We also plan something wild or funny to do during our forecast.
On day 2, we film our forecast. What makes our team amazing?
What makes our team amazing is because we are an amazing team.
We all have different ways we help, and we all have different talents.
We are learning how to read a weather forecast and knowing the weather for the week that is coming up.
We are now famous at Kootenai Elementary.
We are also more aware of the way we dress because we know the forecast. Thank you for watching our presentation. Any questions?
Do you want to call on her, Eli?
Eli?
What's some of the other wild and funny things you do? Because I saw one.
Do the talk.
We
One
throw
of them that I remember is we threw a cup at each other.
Okay.
and what's our plan for when it's nice out?
When it's nice out and warmer, we planning to do it outside so we can prove it that it's going to be the weather.
Are there any other questions?
When is it going to be warm?
During springtime.
Summer may come.
She's a true weather person.
Yeah, it sounds pretty accurate.
Very vague.
50-50.
Well, thank you very much for presenting and showing us what you're doing in the elementary.
Thank you.
Great job.
We have the Clark Fork junior and senior high school students presenting. Here they come.
Morgan.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Is that off and on?
Thank you. That's awesome.
These are beautiful. Welcome, Clark Fork Junior Senior High School students.
You guys, thank you very much for having us. I'm Phil Kimmick. I'm the principal at Clark Fork High School. Casey McDonald, new but not so new to my building. He returned as an assistant administrator, so I'm introducing him to everybody as well. I love having him here. I would also like to thank 3 of my teachers. Stand up there in the back: Kyle Olmstead, Dan Jones, and Kelly Woodmansee. Those guys traveled here for moral support, and you guys, I really appreciate it. We're going to be talking today about it's somewhat of our track program, but we got some leadership stuff to talk about, as well as what we're trying to get off the ground, a school store where we can actually sell some of the stuff we're making. And so I'm going to let these guys all introduce themselves. I was going to have him introduce Tucker, but Tucker, you're up.
Hello, I'm Tucker Verzier. I am the vice president. I will be filling in for our president today. Unfortunately, she was not able to make it. Next slide. So what this track is all about is it was a combination of our leadership track and our school store track put into one so that we could easily communicate between the two tracks, like going out and helping our community since they provided our school with much of the funding, and setting up the school store, which of course was very important for trying to get off the ground. What we would do on a normal school day, well, normal track day, was we would first go to our classes, of course, and then our teachers would make sure we were there. Then we would have our school board, our student body council explain to us what we would be doing for that day, and we would separate into separate groups, such as the separate groups. And basically we would go to those classes and then we would work all day on what needed to get done. And next up we have Aurora.
Okay, so for the community day, we helped out around the community because, like Tucker said, they do a lot for us as a school. It was a lot of fun giving back because I see so much of the community and it needs some help every now and then since I've been here for quite a while. We did things like stack woods, paint, or clean. One place that we helped out was the Filling Station Youth Center, which provides local kids a place to go and get food and a nice warm place to stay when it's cold out. So not only do they help us outside school, but they help us in school a lot. They do things like scoreboard for our games, and they help with like the entry fee and bringing people in. So, and I've been going there for around 3 years, so it's really nice to see the changes that we did. We painted the walls and we cleaned the bathrooms, and it just looks so much better. This helped with our leadership skills a lot because it shows us what it's like working in a field, like working, and I've had summer jobs, but that's kind of different because I know the people and I get to see the change that it makes. And next up we have the leadership. So leadership is a lot about leading, so having a student leaders makes a lot of sense. We elected a student council consisting of a president, a vice president, a secretary, a treasurer, and a council rec. And I believe that being a part of the student council, or even helping out with the student council, helps the people out in the real world. They become leaders in their work or in other classes, and I've even noticed a change in my leadership skills since we started. So we had Jamie Herrick as our president. She wasn't here today. Tucker Verzier as our vice president. Savannah Weymouth was our secretary. I was the treasurer, and Rebecca Heilman was the accounts rec. Next up, we have Stone.
So my committee was basically how to make these things for the school store, such as my flag, and as you see up there, Cherish's Rose. We made a lot of things. We also learned how to weld, use the CNC machine, all these different things that can help us in a future career. And next up is Charlie.
Hello, I was the leader of the rebuilding committee. Our school was supposed to help our school for the yearly fund and sale. We had 3 groups for the race committee. Group 1 being the ring, being the group that makes the metal rings for the branches to hold. Group 2 being the ones that make the ribbon for the wreaths, and Group 3 the one building the wreaths. Next up we have Rebecca Heilman.
Hello, I was the school spirit track. Sadly, our committee leader could not be here today, so I'm taking his place. But I had lots of fun coming up with some ideas. School spirit was not only just about like dressing up, as you can see in the pictures, but we also had a pep rally to get school spirit up. It was just a way to get people that may not interact with everyone every day to be a part of the school and bring the school together as a whole. So some of our days were like 70s, 80s, 90s day. We had Generation Swap Day. We had a Christmas Pajama Day right before Christmas break. Let's see, what else was there? There are quite a few. But then there was also our pep rally, and that was during volleyball and football season. Since we had such a small school, we were able to do it where all the football boys play all the volleyball girls, and a volleyball game in the gym during lunch, and it was just so much fun for everyone as I was playing. It was like the best because the boys are so competitive and they're actually good at that. And it was really fun because the girls, we just had fun more than actual competition, but the boys were like, we're gonna win this.
Who won?
So who won? think it was the boys.
I think it was the boys.
So, next is.
Doesn't happen very often.
Hi, I was the leader of the seasonal trinkets track. This track was a lot about preparing for next year. Some of the things we did was we made these ornaments in front of you to sell. There are several others like it. However, they're all unique in their own way. These appeal to the people and bring us these leadership skills of how to brand and how to make things and how to sell to people. Next up, we have Cherish.
That's me. So the carpentry track, carpentry class, what this was about was learning how to work with wood and build sheds to sell on our school website once we get that up and running. And, well, that's basically all we have. Now we have Cherish. Sorry. Go back real quick. The person that was going to be presenting this unfortunately cannot make it either. Now we have Cherish.
I'm Cherish. I was the leader of the advertisement committee. So basically what we did was anytime we had an event for the school or the school was selling things, we would make like advertisements for them. Some of the advertisements that we made was we made posters to put around town for our Christmas wreaths, and we also promoted our community day. And then we actually made a video ad for our seasonal trinkets, like the ones in front of you. But another big part of our committee was we were in charge of filming the announcements for our school, so we would go up there and film. Next we have Liv.
Hello, I was the leader of the webpage design committee. We were the ones in charge of making a website for the rest of school to use to sell the products they created, like the ornaments in front of you, the sheds and carpentry, the metal trinkets, and of course school merchandise and other things. We ran into some problems. We didn't really get the website up and running yet, but we still are working on it and we're hoping to use it more in the future. And we actually have our website for you all to look at. Please keep in mind it's still really rough. Well, that's our website.
So I'd like to thank you guys all for letting us come here and presentate. Would you guys have any questions at all?
If we wanted to make a donation for this lovely ornament, how would we do that?
These kids are always willing to take cash.
I would also like to add that we made those for you guys, so you guys don't have to donate.
What is on the table next to the roses?
This is a gear shelf, so it's just a little shelf.
I just couldn't see from over here. That is really, really cool. It's awesome.
Well, you guys have really got expertise in a wide range of areas. Just looking at that whole program, there's a lot of different talents.
Yeah, this was only one of our tracks. There's a couple others too.
All right.
So when you say a store, is that like on campus? Or what is that? A web store?
It's an online store. We've got everything on campus, like all the physical items, and because of competitions, we can only sell in person, but all of our items are listed on the website. Yeah.
We're trying to figure that piece out as to how to actually make it work so that people can purchase them online.
Easy, yeah. That's cool.
And that's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was really great.
Yeah. Who made that? Do you have a price for that already, or are we bidding tonight?
From October Monday.
I need the rose because it may or may not be Valentine's.
Yeah. It's too late.
Are there any other questions or anything else you wanted to tell us? I did get a chance to look a little bit at your boards back there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
And next we have a
report, superintendent report from Dr. Becky Meyer.
This is different than normal.
Oh, it's just two of us?
Thank you. Sorry, just pause for 2 seconds. Phil, I can't be there tomorrow morning, so I would normally bring those to the kids. I always bring the kids a treat from the pantry the next day after they present, but I'm going to be on the plane at 5 in the morning, so I won't be able to make it, so I got them today to give to the principal, to give to the student presenter.
Why don't you give them this and give us?
Yeah, why did they?
Somebody brought me that as a Valentine's Day gift. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. All right. I love having student presentations because it's really what school's supposed to be about. So the fact that we start with student presentations and then let them go do their homework is, I think, really important. So I do want to tell you, pink is my least favorite color. I was going to say I hate pink, but then Kelly and Tanya, both Trustee Sherman, both have pink on, and so I didn't think that was probably very nice to say out loud. So I'll tell you that pink is not my favorite color.
We get the idea.
But Kelly did give me some pressure to do this thematic thing this year. So this is like my third thematic presentation. So today is Valentine's Day, as you probably all have heard. And so I'm going, there's a little bit of an overkill on the presentation theme tonight.
You're forgiven.
So, thank you. We're halfway through. We just hit our halfway through our school year. So I thought I would recap my progress on the superintendent transition this year, on my 5 goals and my plan of action. So I'm going to just do a quick little update on each 5 tonight. Emphasis on quick, everyone in the audience is saying. So the first one, build a strong working relationship with the board, the community, patrons, parents, students, staff. And these are just a few of the ways that I did a 360 feedback survey, so all the people that work with me could give me feedback. We're actually going to go through that in my evaluation in executive session tonight. I've been going to quite a few community organization events, school events throughout the community to make sure that I'm getting there and being involved in the community. I've been going into classrooms. We have a walkthrough board at the district office, so our entire district leadership team is keeping track so that we make sure and go to every school on a consistent basis and then get into the classrooms, not just meeting with the principals. And then started a think tank. We had our first think tank meeting, which are certified folks thinking outside the box, solution, problem solving. And we had our first CDI, classified district input team. That's where every school and department and every job classification of classified staff is represented. And that's, again, a problem-solving think tank to talk about how do we think outside the box to solve problems in our district. So that's from a classified perspective. So those are just a few ways that I'm trying to reach this goal. This we'll be going to later. You will see we have it separate on the agenda. Our first, I'm super proud of it, but our first 5-year strategic plan draft tonight to the board for the first iteration for them to see. And thank you to Kristen Hawkins to put the hearts on that. The second, the third goal, so that was the first and second goal. The third goal is safety, school safety. So every month I report to you on school safety, the district safety task force. I did have the mid-year review with Chief Kuhn looking at our SRO program. We did some evaluation and there were some tweaks that he made based on staff feedback that I think have been helpful to the program. And then we have really been doing a good job in the safety task force of looking at new research coming out. This was just released in January, and it is a new Secret Service report that talks about acts of violence, and it really had some spots for us as a school district to really look at what could we do to help implement some of the new recommendations. So we did have a report, we dissected this, looked through it in our district safety task force, and then have recommendations going forward into the schools. I linked it in here because this does go onto the website after the board presentation tonight, so the public can look at this and also the board can. So this is a lot of words, and normally we don't do presentations at a board meeting with lots of words, but this is a report from Matt Deal, the facilities director, and he just worded it so well that I didn't want to cut it down, so I'm just going to suffice it to say, this is at Washington Elementary, and we kept having sticking problems, and I would go in there, and kids could get in, and it was a safety concern for me. So he replaced all the doors. We had also some internal window security issues and some miscellaneous projects. But I will say, I want everyone to know, if we didn't have that, the facilities director that we have with his staff, we would be costing the taxpayers a lot more money than we are. I'm amazed at what they do to help our district. They've done a lot of the pre-work for our access control. You know, we have it up and going at all of our 5 secondary schools. And we're just waiting on the video pieces. We're missing some parts from the supply chain. We're still waiting on that. But they've done all the pre-work at the next 5 schools to get up and running. And also technology is out doing this. So both of those departments working together have really been fiscally helping us as a district. So the fourth goal is review performance data and assess unfinished learning gaps. You'll see I'll talk about this a little bit later in our strategic plan draft, but I wanted to remind you that we do this on a very consistent basis. Daily, we're looking at where are our students, how do we help them grow. This is happening, we have several teachers out in the audience that you'll see we'll talk. It really has to do with a fall baseline. As a district, I'm reporting to you, Andrew and Casey are coming up and they'll report to you about where we are as a district. But the principals are looking at their data at their school. The classroom teachers are looking at their data for individual students in the classroom, and that's what makes it work in this district. So in the fall, we presented, Andrew and Casey presented to you in fall board meeting where our baseline was. Then we just finished our data dive with all 11 principals came in. We had all of their data. They talked us through it. Where were you in the fall? What were your goals this year? Where are we at mid-year? Are you on track? Is there something you need to tweak to do better to reach a goal? Or there were instances where some principals had already met the goal. Okay, we're not going to lay on our laurels. What are we going to do? What are you going to do to change your goal to keep moving and progressing your students? So we just finished those. I put it in the board update. We just finished all of those last week. Really enlightening. I mean, it was one of the best things I think I've ever been through is to have the principal really talk through what the goals were at their school. I mean, this is drilling down to grade levels and classrooms. It was amazing. So at the March board meeting, Andrew and Casey will be up here and they will be presenting where the mid-level, our growth is as a district. And at the end of the year, then we will show you, celebrate the achievement and all the growth we've made at our June board meeting. And then the last goal of the 5 from my superintendent transition plan was comprehensive and collaborative communication. So I always put in the loop in case somebody, hopefully, I think everyone in the community has access now, but hopefully if people haven't heard of it, they can see it here. I also want to give a big shout out to all of our district leadership team has been doing a really good job of grasping pictures. And we started, this year an Instagram account. And that also gets linked right over, once I post on Instagram, it posts right over to Facebook. For some people, I guess, have Facebook and some have Instagram. So we're kind of killing, or I shouldn't say that, I don't want to kill anybody. We're kind of meeting needs of all different types of avenues of communication. So that, if you could join, we have a hashtag LPOSD, and if you put that on any of your posts that you do throughout the community, then it links it up with our school district and to showing great things that are happening in our school district. I have my first community coffee clatch, which when I was a principal in this district, I did every month, I did coffee clatches. And it was a great way for me to connect with folks that aren't just the regular ones that come in. So we're going to have my first community one coming up in March 22nd, which I'll have an invite in the next slide. I also wanted to talk about being a North Idaho advocate. So I think something that's important for our school district, if we just stay in isolation and do great things, but we don't really ripple out into the state and also don't learn from other people in the state what they're doing well, it really kind of stagnates us. So we want to make sure that we are sharing what we're doing well and also learn about bright spots throughout the state. Right now, I'm pretty much sharing all of our bright spots because I'm finding that we're doing so much well. I'm not trying to brag, but I feel like everything I'm talking about, people are like, oh, you're doing that. like we just get a lot of recognition in our school district. So last week, I was down to speak to the House Ed and Senate Ed down at the legislature. We also spoke to the state superintendent, the State Board of Education President Kurt Liebig, and I also got to meet with the governor and tell him how important I thought enrollment funding was face-to-face. So that was very interesting. Needless to say, I feel like we're really advocating for North Idaho and what our needs are in North Idaho. One thing that's very important is that I spoke to was the CTE. I talked about what we have here up in North Idaho. I talked about K-Tech and how really there is some inequality of opportunity for students in our state. If we have K-Tech down in Raptrum and Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, and Lakeland get to share K-Tech, Bonners Ferry, Lake Pend Oreille, West Bonner, we don't have access. We're not allowed to have our kids go down there. There are several small places throughout the state that they do not have access to something as distinguished and amazing as K-Tech. I was fortunate to sit on the K-Tech board for 6 years. So I did take down, we took a Growing the Trades group from here. I've taken 2 groups of people down to tour K-Tech. And last time when we went, somebody said, Becky, you talked about this and you kept bragging and talking about how awesome it was. Nothing compares to actually being in these hallways and seeing this program in person. You could not have even explained it as well as you did, as well as just going there. So I did talk to the legislature about having opportunities for kids throughout the state, because the Constitution in Idaho says general, thorough, and uniform, meaning we need to have uniform educational opportunities for students throughout the state. And I think it's important that our state representatives and senators know that. So that was really important to me. That brought up the next point. If you're looking at K-Tech, anyone who's in the audience who and the board has lived here for a long time knows it is the hardest state in the entire nation to pass a bond. #1 hardest in the entire country, because you have to have a supermajority, 67 2/3, and there's no matching funds, no facility funds coming from the state. So anyone who lives in Idaho, even though we have all of this surplus, it is the hardest place. So I reminded the legislators of their constitutional duty and really the discussion, because it comes up every legislative session. It'd be great if we looked at lowering that supermajority or looking at a way for some funds when they do have a surplus year, that they have some sort of longevity, something in perpetuity that helps us with facilities. Because I have taken our representative, Mark Sauter, and our senator, Scott Herndon, around on tours, and we do have some facility needs that you'll see coming up in our 5-year strategic plan that the community members have voiced. That's the facility funding issues. Usable performance measures, I'll just say a brief thing because this is very teaching and learning. Anyone who gives the ISAT knows at the end of the year, it is a summative assessment. That means that it is not available to help teachers inform instruction in the here and now for their students. That can be a grade report of, yes, I did great. I have this many students reach proficient and above. That's a great, like, okay, good job, we did, what we wanted to do, but it doesn't help the teachers in the moment while they're teaching during the year to provide what's called formative assessment, like to give them feedback as they're teaching to help the students, where do I need to keep reaching the student to help them grow to meet proficient and above. So we really talked about, I talked about when I presented, usable performance measures that we can use if the state would fund those, so that we can help the teachers along the way and prove to people that we're learning and growing as we're going. Because if you look at our data, our students are growing in the classrooms, and we want to show the legislators, taxpayers, your money is going to good use. We are growing your students. So I talked to them about that, and then I've already mentioned ADA is average daily attendance. Those are different now. Enrollment funding has been the last 3 years because of the COVID, when there were people at home, quarantine, social distancing, when we shut down to the governor's orders for that time. We have not gone back to average daily attendance. And I will tell you, you'll see it in the 5-year strategic plan, attendance is different than it was pre-COVID. So we need to address that as a state, and I feel very strongly about that. I could probably talk to you for another hour about that, which I know I would get hook, line, and sinker, I'd be off. Board chair would pull me off. So if anyone wants to talk about this or has any questions or want to talk, I would love to talk to you more about that. The other thing that came up, and I don't see her here, but hopefully the patron that asked about this will watch this video after the fact, is that somebody said, when people come up and say public patron comments, I always take notes, and if it's something I want to answer the next board meeting, or I reach out to the person if it's something I can answer, and it's like a one-off question. If I think that it's a question that the public would like to hear, then I bring it, address it at the next meeting. So Superintendent Critchfield, somebody asked about, I was on her transition team. She had 22 people throughout the state in different roles throughout the state on her transition team. I was one of them. I felt very blessed and honored to be so, because I feel like it was a chance for me to speak to North Idaho values and what's important to us up here. So I wanted to give a little bit, okay, it's coming up after this. This one's put in first. So thank you, Kristen Hawkins. So this is our upcoming connection, is our coffee clatch. And she made this wonderful invite. We'll be sending it out to parents, and she'll put it in the paper and on all of that social media stuff. So it'll be a coffee clatch, which means everyone's invited. Starbucks is donating, and one of my students is actually the manager. He's donating the coffee for free, good for our taxpayers. And we get to stay in the lobby and people can come ask questions. So I think it'll be a good opportunity for anyone who maybe doesn't want to go to the district office, or I get busy in these things and they can't check in with me, to be able to meet people. So that, put it on, mark your calendars, Wednesday, March 22nd from 9:30 to 10:30 at the Starbucks. So on Debbie Critchfield's transition team, I'm not going to read all this, but I just want the public and the board to be able to look at that if they want to look at this later. I was assigned to the K-12 budget team, probably because I have done a lot of work with the state budget team, and we really came up with belief statements. We use the interest-based, how we use in this district, interest-based bargaining. We use the interest-based decision-making process to really get to the meat of what do we all want to make sure that we have the same interests, which always goes to the heart of our students. Everything we do has to come back to what's best for students. So we talked about what of her campaign promises. CTE was it. Financial literacy will be put in with economics, so it's not going to add additional. You guys up here, all of you students, will be happy to know, the students are here. We aren't giving you additional graduation requirements. We're going to put it into your current consumer economics class, is going to be financial literacy. Also, flexibility in school budgets. They really want to have local control. So instead of staying so many line items, Debbie Critchfield, Superintendent Critchfield said, how about if we collapse some and give more leeway locally to the local people to say, what do you need in your school district? And then increase classified staffing funding, which you've probably read about. So you can look through that piece. That was the budget committee. Then the CTE one, I chose to sit in on that one only because it's very much at my heart to look at this. So she talked about how do we identify bright spots just throughout the state successfully, how do we replicate that? And then she talked about barriers or bottlenecks, like how do we make sure we can fund it? Because one thing that people get fearful of, it does cost a lot to start CTE programs. There's a lot of initial investment. How do we make sure that can maintain sustainability for the longevity of the program? So that was something that we talked about in this. And then looking at a regional approach. So you can look through all of that later. I did want the board to know and the public to know when we have any board policies that go through a first read, I send it out to whoever I think might want to have some input for the board before they make their final decision on a vote. So when we have a first read, they read it and ask questions. I get input. So for this one, it was a board policy for employees, their responsibilities about harassment, intimidation, and bullying, and what sort of professional development and training they need to go through annually by state code. So I did ask staff for feedback, and we did get feedback that I shared with the board. And this is big news. This is I've kind of been greasing, is that okay to say greasing the skids? That's okay. I have to sometimes check out my little sayings, because sometimes I'm like, wait, is that the right one to say? Like the killing two birds with one stone, I don't want to say that. So we are going to move forward with moving our early release from Wednesdays to Friday. So I did bring this up with you all in November. I brought it to a public board meeting here. I told you all that we're looking into it. Then I've been updating you in the board updates, saying we did a staff survey, had some feedback from staff of things they were concerned about, instructional minutes, different things. So we did some tweaks, ensured that we're going to have instructional minutes covered, made sure that that the staff was on board with this. Then we went out to parents once that happened, and you'll see in the next, before we get to that, there's overwhelming parent support. But let me show you, I just want to at least reiterate the why. Why are we doing this? Why are we making this change? So we really want to make sure that that everyone, including the board, but everyone in the public knows, if we have a full day of instruction on Wednesday, we have 4 full days of instruction. Then Friday is the kind of mashed day or a little bit less day of instruction because we have the PLC time at the end. That creates 4 focus days, and people felt like that was really important. There's no middle of the week kind of interruption and things are different, so it kind of saves that till the end. We do have staff that have been in other districts that have this on Friday and feel like it was much better focused for the students and staff. So except for parent-teacher conferences, there's a lot of consistency also for families. And then when we looked at our attendance rates, Friday is the most missed day. So if it was a day they're missing, it is a shortened instructional time instead of a full day. The other piece that I will show you here lastly that I want to talk about a why that we didn't research yet, but I do want you, if you follow the Idaho Ed News that came out, they did do a release of a I don't know if it's an official report, but it's action research that they did in Bonneville. And it really is a way, they have a different on a Monday, and they have students who are at risk, meaning that their grades are not A's or B's. C's could be low C's, D's, or F's. Students who are struggling in certain classes come and they get intervention and really specialized help on that day. So if students are already mastering a class, A or a B, they're doing well, they wouldn't have to come on that Monday, and only people who are getting assistance. And their test scores have skyrocketed. Their grades, that we call it in high school, we call it a DFI list, DF or incomplete. Their DFI list is minimized. And I called and talked to the superintendent. He just says this is the best thing they've ever done, is having those 4 instructional days and then focus on interventions, helping people. I mean, you could have A's in all classes and still want to come be at school. It's not shutting it down, but it allows students who need extra help to come. We're not at that point. I'm not announcing that, but I do think that it would be nice for us as a staff to start talking about that and how we could help kids. So I at least wanted to include that here for people to start thinking about as we start moving forward into next year. So this is the parent responses is 94% in favor and 6 not. And the staff survey, 87% chose the Fridays. In my world, that's overwhelming. And so in my world, that is something where we're going to move forward next year. And so we'll start the piece. Once the board's notified, unless the board has major concerns that they want me to research, we will start the ball rolling to make sure our schedules are done, calendars are done, and everybody will be on. It's February, so we have time to make sure everyone's notified with plenty of time. Okay. Thank you. Any questions? Contact information, and then happy Valentine's. Sorry it was a long one today, but we were halfway through the year. So any questions?
No, I appreciate the thoroughness of these reports. Thank you. Anyone? Okay.
Thank you.
Well, with that, we'll move into public comment. I feel like my back. As usual, I'll make the statement before we begin. The Board of Trustees welcomes patron comments from the community. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person, must be appropriate for an open forum. Input must not identify individual personnel or students or be abusive, defamatory, or obscene. This is a board meeting held in public, not a public board meeting as governed by Idaho Code 33, Section 5. Thus, no discussions or responses can occur during the meeting. Issues may be referred to the proper staff person or committee or superintendent for follow-up on the board's discretion. Any complaint about the district, including instruction, discipline, district personnel policy, procedure, or curriculum, should be referred through the proper channels before it's presented to the board. And should a large number of the public wish to speak on the same issue or topic, you'll be encouraged to select one representative to summarize the group's position. So first up, I have Matt Holland. Welcome.
Thank you. There's a lot of pink.
I'm Matt Holland. I'm a 6th grade teacher at Farm and Stidwell, and I just wanted to come and share a fun story. I feel like it's always a good time for good news. I've got a student in my class this year. There's a couple every year, but you get that kid that says, I'm not a reader. And sometimes that child is not a reader due to a learning difficulty, and sometimes it's due to the fact that they've convinced themselves that they're not. And the scary part about the second group is that eventually they will not be a reader if they continue not to practice, not to work, and not to do those skills. So I have a gentleman in my class this year that, Mr. Hahn, I'm not a reader. I'm hunting, I'm fishing, I'm doing this. I don't have time. And I threw every book I knew at him, and one after the other came back. I made it to page 5. I don't like it. I'm not a reader. And so one day I finally pull out the nuclear option. I've got Hatchet, which for an 11, 12-year-old boy, this is it. And I'm thinking, if this doesn't work, I'm done, I'm toast. And as I'm talking to him, the gentleman who cleans my room at night came in and sat down and without prompting shared how he was that same kid as a child and how now as an adult he's trying to catch up and read every book he can. And he just says to the kid, if you'll read it, I'll read it. You know, does Mr. Hahn have a copy? And so I gave him a copy, and that first one took about a month to get through, and it was still a struggle. But at the end of the month, they got to sit down, we got them pizza, and they sat down in my room and they had their book club. And this gentleman shared a little bit more about his struggles as a student, and that was right around Thanksgiving break. And at the end of the meeting, he looked at me and he said, what's next? And so they read the sequel to Hatchet, and now, coming into the end of February, they're about to finish their 4th book. Where the Red Fern Grows. Our custodian finished it. He came in this morning and said, you know, are you trying to kill me? The dogs died, and I said, oh, it's not over. And he came in today and he's like, oh my gosh, the last 2 pages. But this is what's going on in our schools. I think sometimes we hear negative things, and I wanted to share this story because I'm proud to come into a building every day. They say it takes a village, and everywhere these kids turn, they've got someone who is concerned about what they're doing, concerned about their education and their future. And so I'm just proud of that. I'm proud of the quality we bring. I'm proud of the love that we bring, and that everyone from the gentleman who comes in and cleans our room, that some of the kids don't even know he exists because they're not at the after-school program, to our administration, school board, and every teacher in between and specialist, that this is what we're doing at Farm and Stidwell. I'm sure every other building has a story like this, but I just wanted to share it and bring a little good news. And so, you know, we got one more reader, and you know, we've got another book club coming up at the end of February, and I'm sure there'll be a bit of crying. So it'll be good. But thank you for your time.
Thanks for sharing. Okay, so I shared up on that one. Second is Renee Lorden. Welcome.
Hi. Hi everyone, I'm Renee Lorden. I teach 4th grade at Farm and Stidwell, and I just want to share what's happening in my classroom. We had Mystery Science last year, but we did not have the Mystery Science extension packs with all of the supplies for the experiment. So thanks to Andrew and Lisa McElroy, we have these this year. And my kids are so excited to do science every day. It makes it easy for us as a teacher to have all those supplies with us. We just finished the Will Mountains Last Forever experiment. The kids shook sugar cubes in Ziploc containers to break down to see how rocks break down smaller and smaller, and they just loved it. So we're so appreciative of the district and the board getting those supplies to us, and Andrea and Lisa. And just like Matt, I love teaching. It's my most favorite thing to do. A lot of you know this is my 2nd career, and I love that the respect that I get from the district and from our admin team, and I love how we all work together to support students. So thank you.
Thank you. And then I have Renee Nigan and Chris Warren. Did I say your last name right?
Nigan, but that's
Nigan.
okay. No, don't worry. It's fine.
Long, short-eyed.
Yeah, exactly, right? Hello, I'm Renee, and this is Chris, and we're Teach with Mac, and we're 6th grade teachers at Farm and Stidwell. And we also just wanted to share some exciting things that are happening in our classroom, because for the 6th grade team, we get to pilot some science curriculum, which is thanks to all of you and the district admin. And it has been really exciting because our 6th grade students know they're piloting the science curriculum. So they're looking at it as scientists, but then also knowing that they're critiquing it as learners. So as we go through it, they're asking themselves, like, do they like it? Are they learning it? How do they like the experiments? And we're currently piloting one where they're super engaged, and now all the 6th graders, hopefully, if we check our formatives, but they all know what a series and parallel circuit is, and we had kids creating circuits and trying to test, and they wanted to then form new experiments and see how many batteries they could do, and could they maybe blow up the light bulb? Like, well, maybe let's not go that far, but they're really enjoying being scientists and maneuvering all the different pieces, and also knowing that they're critiquing it as well. So it's been really fun. And then we're also really grateful for all that we get more of from our whole community here in Sandpoint.
You know, and when we talk about our community, you know, we have in the classroom that guaranteed and viable curriculum for every student. And we are so blessed as a community to have more, to have so many organizations who just want more for our kids. In the 6th grade this year alone, we've had Northern Lights has invited our kids to solar days to learn about solar energy. Connect2 Land Trust has invited us up to do community cleanup up at Pine Street Woods. Sandpoint Nordic Club is making sure every 6th grade in
third through sixth.
Every kid 3rd through 6th has got the opportunity to go ahead and do cross-country skiing up Pine Street Woods. Coax brings us the arts. Our teacher or parent organization, PI, they just fund so much for us, from Eagle Cruises to Shoshone to countless other projects. We've had Friends of Scotchman's Peak has invited us out down to Round Lake for winter tracks, and our school and also our school families are also overwhelmingly supportive of the education that we get, that we give their kids, and it's just wonderful to work in a community that just wants more for our kids.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you.
And our final is Catherine Barlow. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here, I guess, on a Valentine's Day.
We all are.
Hang with me for a minute, because I'm going to read something that might seem like it doesn't apply. But anyway, Idaho Code regarding obscene materials. Code 18-1513. Obscene materials, dissemination to minors. Policy. It is hereby declared to be the policy of the legislature to restrain the distribution, promotion, or dissemination of obscene material or of material harmful to minors, or the performance of obscene performances or performances harmful to minors. Currently, with regard to that, Idaho public schools, libraries, and museums are exempt from the law. The Idaho legislature is trying to change this. There should not be an exemption for this for anyone. If you or I, heaven forbid, would go share some obscene material to a minor, we would be arrested for a misdemeanor. The reason I'm bringing this up right now is right now in our East Bonner Public Library, there are sexually and graphically explicit materials available. Some of them are horrible. The library is unwilling to put them in a restricted section where a parent would need to check them out or give a permission slip to their child. As a side note, it would be wonderful to see other members of the community at a library board meeting to speak out against this. The library is an after-school hangout for many children from Sandpoint Middle and High Schools. The reason I'm bringing it up here is to ask, is anyone monitoring the materials that are available in our LPOSD school libraries? I know that the American Library Association and government agencies send materials and make recommendations to some of the public schools. And I can only imagine some of it is not material that parents in this community would agree with. So that my question really is there anyone monitoring what's in the school libraries? Is this something that concerned parents or patrons could take on as a project? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for public comment. And we're going to move on to board action, and we have first reading of several policies. The first one, which is policy 4105, public participation at board meeting. If you guys recall, we had some discussion about this, not as an action item, but now it's here in front of us as a first reading. And I open it up for discussion and conversation.
Chair Lewis, if I could address the board.
Yes, please.
And Trustee Sherman was kind enough to share that there was just one grammatical error. On page 2, there's an additional S in there that I would highly recommend that we strike. I did highlight it in the attachment. And then
Carly
also,
missed it.
That is.
Yeah.
Oh, I see it. It's not highlighted on my version, but I see it. Always S out of quarters. No, it's not. It's just an S. It's
no,
just
it's just
hanging.
an additional S.
It's just hanging it. Defamatory abusive remarks are always S out of quarters. Okay.
A random S added, so that would just be my.
Okay, that is duly noted as a change. Is there any other, going back to our conversation, is there any other comments or change to the policy as it sits right now?
I would again be in favor of adding some type of wording that would allow for public comment within at least action item agenda items, board action agenda items. And I have a little bit of, drafting wording here that I can maybe throw out here as well. But I was reading in paragraph 5, it says members of the public will not be recognized by the chair as the board conducts its official business, except when the board schedules a public discussion input period on a particular item. So it's almost like there is a tiny loophole to allow for that anyways.
Well, it's correct, and we don't do it at regular board meetings. We actually schedule certain forums or community discussions around topics that are
Possibly controversial.
Or even just of great interest to a large number of the population.
Right.
Because otherwise, on some of those larger topics, it's good to be able to have it in a discussion, dialoguing sort of environment.
Well, and that's why, so I just put some wording in here that would make it somewhat of an option for you or whoever board chair is. Wouldn't be something that would be in our policy that we would have to recognize public comment every time, because it's already kind of optional depending on.
Do you mean recognizing members of the public not in the public comment? You mean?
Yes, like additional to the public comment portion. Okay. You know what I mean?
I know. I know what you're.
Can I just read what I have,
yeah,
and you can tell me how if you like it or don't,
yeah.
or if it makes sense?
Let's hear what you're.
So the thinking I have would be that first sentence, right? So public discussion input period on a particular item would stay the same, and then we could maybe add something like the board chair will typically or commonly, whichever word, typically or commonly allow for an additional 10 minutes per agenda action item for input from the public. Each speaker will be limited to 2 minutes for a total of 5 speakers. So it's tied into the optional piece that is allowed by you, but it's not something that has to be done every action item. Does that make sense?
Yeah, tell me where you were putting it again.
It would be right after the first sentence of that 5th paragraph. So you see the 5th paragraph where it says members of the public will not be recognized by board chair. I say 5th, I'm not counting the bullet points.
Yeah. So on a
particular item.
Except when the board schedules a public discussion input period on a particular item, and then read.
The board chair will typically or commonly, maybe it might be a better word, allow for an additional 10 minutes per agenda action item for input from the public. Each speaker will be limited to 2 minutes for a total of 5 speakers. Does that make sense? So
it makes
kind of tied to that optional piece, but
Yes, I will clarify that this optional piece is not actually ever in place at a regular board meeting. They are outside of regular board meetings. So those are meetings that are set that are separate from the first Tuesday regular board meeting. And this public participation is specifically set for regular board meetings. So already the only time it happens is not at these meetings. So I'm sort of.
So you're saying this paragraph doesn't talk about board meetings?
No, what I'm saying is.
Both types of board meetings.
It's saying that, except when the board schedules a public discussion input period on a particular, yeah.
Because it almost seems
I
like
think you'd have to elaborate, if we were gonna do something like
We'd
that.
have to
we'd
elaborate
on it.
a
and say,
separate
like,
conversation.
The chair may, like, I wouldn't be in favor of anything unless there's some leeway for the chair, because
right.
If you know.
That was the wording I had.
Yeah, you had
And then it would be
optional. So maybe
specific regular board.
Maybe what needs to be designated here is that there, you know, that except when the board schedules a public discussion input period on a particular item, for instance, at a public forum, Laura, that helps you understand, if you're reading this policy from outside actually attending these meetings, that you realize, oh, these are specifically set up for public discussion, that these meetings are specifically out.
Non-regular board meetings.
Yeah.
Non-regular scheduled board.
Because I
Because
wouldn't
as it
want to
reads
leave
now,
the
it'd be
impression for people to come to a general board meeting thinking, oh, the board may let me, the board chair may call upon me, and then find out, oh yeah, she's only doing that when it's posted that way. So I don't know if maybe the language could be cleared up to help the public understand that there'll be specific times that yes, public input and then dialogue back and forth is encouraged and welcomed. And then there's other times where it's like sticking to the general meeting format.
Okay.
Does that make any, is that sort of clear what we're getting toward, Kelly?
So
She's full.
if I were to post, for example, a special board meeting where you were to have community feedback, I would designate that at the top of the agenda.
Yeah.
And possibly I would want to utilize a community relations liaison and publicizing that broadly.
Yeah.
That you would be seeking public input at a special board meeting, so it could go on to record of all of those comments. Is that
Right,
what you're
and
discussing, Chair?
Yes, that's what I'm referencing, and that is to my way of thinking, that is what this sentence refers to in this 5th paragraph.
Yeah, it could, but it does talk about official business in here. It seems like the wording is very clear that this is during our regular board meetings. Members of the public will not be recognized by the board chair as the board conducts its official business, except when the board schedules it. So could be within, could be a separate forum by the wording, right? I mean, it's just a matter of when it's scheduled.
When it's scheduled, yeah, and I guess that is the point. If it were on our agenda in advance that we intended at whether it's a separate forum or even a regular meeting, if we had it on our agenda that we intended to invite public comment, it would have to be agendized in advance that way so that the public was aware, you know, so it wouldn't just be a spontaneous will or won't, depending on who's sitting in the chair seat, you know, that day or, you know.
And it's scheduled. Yeah.
So then, I hate to do this to you again, read it one more time.
Well, mine is very much wanting, I'm very much wanting mine to be within our regularly scheduled business meetings. That's the wording I have. So knowing that, I can read it again, you know.
Well, knowing that it's sometimes only when pre-scheduled.
Yes. My main
Yeah.
goal is back to when we had this on
First,
the-
when we had our
the
board
beginning.
training, we talked about it, yeah.
Yeah, all the way back to that with Ann, right?
Yes.
Is that to just attempt to allow the public, and for many reasons, whether it's building trust and making sure they aren't being patronized by just like hearing them, but not listening to them, but not hearing them, and giving them chances to share on action items even after they've heard us discuss, and they might hear something new, you know, and I have a chance to share that, you know?
Yeah, and it sounds.
So that's my goal, is to have those opportunities for the public within these moments.
And that sounds more spontaneous than scheduled.
Do you think that the public doesn't have opportunity to comment on stuff that they hear in the meetings in a forum?
Oh, in a forum?
Like, no, I mean, if you have a constituent who
like
says,
separately?
oh, hey, I watched this, Jalen, guess what? This
Yes.
really grinds my gears, let's talk about it. Like, that's.
They
we're-
do.
Okay.
And it is very much to us as individuals. Sometimes some of us are CC'd. you know,
Sometimes they,
you
right,
know, to
sometimes they
multiple.
come to a board trustee and tell you something,
Yes.
and then it comes forward. But often, and I do feel that this dynamic is changing a little bit with our current superintendent, although we were doing it in the past as well, but when a comment comes forward that is like, hey, we both took notes on one that, hey, there's some follow-up needed here.
Right.
And so I have a sense that we do have a good relationship building with the public in that sense, in that she's either going to reach out individually, superintendent, or bring it back up in a board presentation, so that everybody hears the response to that. So in one sense, I do feel like we're making strides in hearing that public comment doesn't just fall on deaf ears
Sure.
and get a facetious nod and move on. I think I want to also, though, preserve the integrity of a business meeting and not have it sidetrack too far, especially if it's on a hot button item. If it's on an item that really, there is a lot of fervor in the community, they really feel passionately one way, another way, then that is something I do want to hear in an environment where we're able to share back and forth. And I also always fall back on that. This is a very, very small representation of the 5,000 plus people in each of the 5 districts who voted. How many do we each have?
Bunch.
More than that. And my point is that I don't want to create an environment where those people, you know, they vote each of you into your seat and say, now I'm asking you to vote, you're the responsible person I've elected, please do the business of the district, because I don't either A, have time to be there, B, this isn't my wheelhouse, so I've elected you to do your due diligence and your follow-up into it. And I would hate to sidetrack those business meetings that prevent us from doing the work we were elected to do by having a bunch of side conversations on really hot items. Those I would prefer to pull out. Anytime that we have, and it has happened, really packed lists, that is maybe something we need to be a little more attentive to, saying, hey, let's have a public meeting.
This is a good time to pause on this. Let's schedule a public meeting.
This is going to be, and
get the input.
Yeah.
And then.
So I still feel reluctant to sit in the middle of a meeting and have an action item come up and be like, I see a hand raised back here, come on forward, you know?
Yeah, there would have to be definitely some
it would have to be
structure.
Scheduled.
Yeah.
Or.
So if there's a hot button issue on our view, is that something we would just then ask that we have this format be ready at the board meeting, so that, you know what I mean?
Right. It would have to be put forward as all agenda items do.
So that when the agenda is
So,
published.
Any one trustee, so the way agendas work, any one trustee can come forward with an agenda item. If it's turned down by the chair as, hey, we're not going to do that, 2 trustees can come.
I know that.
Yeah, so that would be the same thing.
That is, I know that. I'm on the board, so I know that.
No, but I'm saying that for the public.
Oh, gotcha.
I'm saying it for the recording.
But I'm talking about if there is a controversial issue that we think as a board, individual board member needs to have the public format input within, can we then just ask you and
Bring it forward as an
we do
agenda.
that
Hey,
before it's published?
let's put this on the agenda. I'm not opposed to that. I don't want the language to imply that it is spontaneous or even often.
Well, it
because
says schedules. So you
Yeah, says scheduled.
I like that it's not
Yes.
spontaneous because to some
Scheduled.
extent that it's scheduled because that gives people notice and it gives more of an opportunity to draw more people. So if that is something where two people say we'd like to, so is this how it would work? The two of us would like to have it be on here that we are going to put forth a public, we would like to have the school district or whoever's the right appropriate person schedule a meeting at a different point, send it out to the whole public within the next 30 days so that we can discuss it and the feedback at the next meeting. Would that be an example of an appropriate way to do that? Kelly? Beck?
I don't see why it couldn't be. I wouldn't think, I mean.
And that's almost more procedure than policy.
Yeah.
Something we
It's a
do
procedure.
in
One of the issues that I have with it being a one-sided discussion in this forum, in a public meeting, is that there are many times when we sit here and somebody is up there railing against us on something that has, one, zero to do with what we're talking about, and two, they're not even right. Like, you can come, and if you're mad at us, you can come up here and tell us, this is what's happening. I would love to talk to that person in a different format and say, no, let me show you what's actually happening. But thank you for going up there and ripping us a new one in front of all of the public so that they can, so now it's a part of the public record, when it's not even true. Like, I do not want to extend this one-sided, like, hey, you're gonna come yell at us about something that may or may not even be true. And I don't want to just sit here and go, No,
So-
that's not a forum. Nobody's being educated there.
Yeah.
So that's,
in this
personally,
way,
I've got a problem with that.
In this way, it would be after our discussion on an action item. So they've heard our way, our conversation, and then they would have an opportunity to speak. So it wouldn't be just them railing, they would have our conversation to talk about as well. Of course, it would only be one way, and then that's the end of it.
Yeah.
We could never respond back, but it wouldn't be that they could just share without any, sample.
And you were, so I would say that here we have the 30-minute public comment at the beginning, which I think has been an appropriate boundary to set there. Any larger topics with more speakers, this is not the appropriate place. Those need a forum where there can be dialogue, where there can be notes taken, where there can be interaction. So that's a separate thing. Then the part you're talking about is adding a little piece, a sentence or a sentence and a half after the members of the public will not be recognized, blah, 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 on a particular item, period. And then some sentence that says, when scheduled in advance.
Could we have this forum type of setting within our board meeting on one particular item?
I don't know that, I think that will derail the business of the board.
Okay.
That we have, right now, we have one regular meeting a month and it's pretty full, just with general business. I don't mind having special forums. We've done it in the past around budget items, around facility issues, around 5-year strategic planning, and they're very useful, but it almost is too, all of a sudden you're gonna have a 2 or 3 hour meeting and we've already lost, 60 to 70% of our group tonight. So I would hate to try and do too much in a regular board meeting. In my opinion, I think if
You would
we
be in
can,
favor of having it on a separate meeting?
that's my
I would be in favor of having it in a second meeting. The reason being, we've gone down to one meeting a month. So if there is an especially hot topic or just something that's really deep and important, I would like to have that second opportunity to schedule and have people.
And have it be a single
item issue, and then really be able to reach out to people and say, hey, this is your opportunity to come and have a
We're
dialogue.
talking about budget, blah, blah, blah.
And
We're
have
talking about
people-
student achievement. We're talking about,
Yeah, and have the right people able to address that. So if it's a facilities thing, have Matt be there. I mean, you have the expert in, in advance prepared to go.
Now-
That'd be a benefit of doing it that way.
I want to ask if you feel you have enough content to adjust the first read, the content.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So for point of reference, at the second reading, if the board is still not happy with that language, just because it says second reading does not mean you have to adopt the policy, but
We can
table
discuss
till
it
the
again
next, discuss
with
it
more
again.
changes.
Correct.
So can you come back with a draft that gets that gist?
Yes.
Are you all comfortable with that?
You're just redrafting with some extra verbiage in there after that sentence kind of idea?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm actually okay with it the way it is. If we're willing as a board to have more, hot topic forum type of things outside. My goal is to have more public input when we can, whenever we can. And so if that's the way we're willing to do it, then I'm good for that. And if this is fine the way it is, then I'm good with that too.
Well, that's
And with some wordsmithing, just so we are on the same page, adding a statement of when the board feels that there is a pressing topic where there may be a lot of community input, we will schedule a community input meeting through a special meeting, of course, wordsmith appropriately.
And even
Just
maybe the
within this
verbiage,
policy.
if that's what you put in, to communicate in here that we'd be willing to defer an item that's already on if we recognize in the moment it's being talked about by 10 people in a row.
That's good.
Agreed.
That public
That
now
we're not
knows,
ready to-
you know what, we're not even gonna touch it till we.
And
have
that
a forum.
I'm trying to think of when that just recently happened, where we're like, okay, this is something we're not done discussing. Oh, I know, it was on the parent.
Yeah,
right?
we just did that a few times.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't want to take up terribly too much time, but are you all comfortable with bringing it back with Kelly's input on that? Okay. I would like to move on to the next first reading of policy 4140. And what you'll see is this policy's been revised, the next policy removed to combine these two. So is anybody presenting on this, or is it just what we're reading?
I think you could just see if you look at both of them, they were duplicates of each other. The definitions were not there, so Kelly put the definitions in the one, and so that we can just have the one policy, because it was basically saying the same thing.
Yes. Did anybody have any questions about how those two were melded into one?
No.
And I appreciate you doing that, streamlining it.
When I read it, I was reading both of them. She gave them, and I was like, wait,
This is the same thing. Are there any questions on the first reading of policy 4140 and any complaints about removing policy 43100?
My only question was just under definitions. The first one says school property means within da 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 da, and then after the bold, the very next first paragraph says for the purposes of this policy, school property means. Again, it just seems redundant. Can we put that more thorough definition up in the bold, combine those two, and then go on with the policy? Or is there a reason?
No.
Okay.
I can absolutely add that, and as you can see in that first sentence, school property, of course, trustee Decker did email me and say that my formatting and tab was off, so yes, of course, that will be corrected as well.
So you're saying just under the very first definition, incorporate some of the dialogue that's in that very.
This right here, for the purposes of this
Yes,
policy.
Yeah.
that sentence.
It's
Yeah.
redundant.
And eliminate that sentence.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm in favor of that. Is there any other changes to this 41, no, 4140? Okay. Are there any objections to the removal of 4300 based on what you see here? Well, then I will move along and hear a motion for consent agenda.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
It's moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. And now we do have some board action items here. Request for proposal approval for networking equipment presented by Matt Brass.
Which is Kelly tonight.
Which is Kelly. Hello.
I have some talking points that Director of Technology has available for me, but his recommendation is the less expensive of the two bids that we did receive when I opened those. And I would do my best to answer any technology questions you may have.
What is a 10-way? I'm just kidding.
This is he talked to this
Yes.
last time, right?
He did,
It's the same
but
thing.
when he went out for
Bid.
the bid.
Yeah.
Request for bid.
So you have to request permission from the board to go out for bid, and then the bids have come in. They were just those two, as stated in his agenda request, and with his recommendation.
If there are no questions of Matt, Kelly, doing business as Kelly, I will entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve the bids submitted by Ednetics Inc.
A second.
It's moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that motion passes. Sorry, I'm not clicking buttons fast enough on my really fancy agenda. So we will move on to the, where am I? 5-year strategic plan, superintendent.
And
Dr. Meyer.
Ms. Hawkins, if Mrs.
And
Hawkins is going to be with me.
Presenting to us. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
What we're all waiting for.
Thanks for those of you who stuck around.
Yes.
I know.
Extra credit for everyone in the audience right
Fun
now.
to spend Love Day with you.
So you'll notice, for anyone who doesn't know, it is one of the board's legal responsibilities to adopt the strategic plan for a district, of which the board asked me to do a 5-year strategic plan. And our plan is to hopefully have you, once you adopt this, every year we'll bring it back. We'll get community and patron input, staff, students, and we'll bring it back to you. And then add on 1 year so we have a rolling 5-year every year.
All right, so just to remind you all about the process for building this 5-year strategic plan, we first started by gathering community input. This began in September. We put out an online survey, and we hosted some community forums that each of you showed up to, and many of our administrators. These were held at Sandpoint Middle School, Clark Fork, and Sayville, and at those locations there were also paper surveys offered. Then we began the synthesizing process. This took place in December and January. We figured out with a fine-tooth comb what were the major themes, what did the data say, and this was done by all of the leadership teams, the think tank, which is a group of certified personnel that have volunteered to take part in giving feedback to Dr. Meyer, and a classified team. And the district office was also a part of that. Then we had a draft for community feedback. Oh, I want to go back to synthesizing. We also had a community feedback forum after that. So we put it back out to the public and invited individuals to come to the district office. And they met with us, and we were a mighty team and just got a lot accomplished that night. So thanks to everyone who showed up for that. Then we had a draft that went out. This went out at the end of January in the Loop. Dr. Meyer held an interview on February 1st with KRFY and had a detailed explanation for the strategic plan. It was put in the newspaper. So lots of information out to the public, and it's also been on our website. And today we're here giving our initial presentation to the board. We hope you'll approve it in March or April so that
I can do the work of getting it out to the public and just making it known in a hopefully visually pleasing and easy to read way.
Okay, thank you. I will remind the board when we started, when I was hired, one of the first things you said was, okay, we're going to start over with the strategic plan. We're just going to let the other one expire and we're going to start over. So gathering all of that stakeholder input, I'm not trying to brag because it's really not me, it's everyone in the entire public, but I am really proud of how far we've come because I started on July 5th and now we're only in February and we already have something to bring to you. When I look back at everything we've done and all of the input, 994 people and just in the surveys, and then all of these input forums have been really, I mean, just, it's been wonderful to see people give so much input. So I just am reminding you that we all started with a blank whiteboard in the beginning of the year.
And then there were 3 major questions that were asked. These were, what are the priorities for Lake Pend Oreille School District? What are the greatest challenges you see us having to overcome in the next 5 years? And then how do we evaluate quality? Dr. Meyer also wants to share about some of the comments that were made because every single comment that was put on this strategic plan survey was read through and documented. And that took a lot of time and love from all of the people involved. So I'm really proud of the process.
So this is not, obviously I know you can't see this, but what I wanted to, this is the 4th iteration. When she talked about there was a lot of love, we went through, I mean, anyone who's looked at data or done surveys and tried to synthesize, or I call it funneling, starting with a lot of information and how do you funnel it into usable pieces. And these are themes that we talked about. Typically, if you look at any one strategic plan, almost everybody has 5. Our last one in this school district had, the last 2 I looked at had 5. I don't know what it is about the magic number 5, but this really synthesized and funneled out into 4 themes. And you'll see the themes as we move forward. This visual is just supposed to tell you, when we had the themes, you could see there started at the top there, and then people went around when we had them in person and they would write comments and they would write, and then different colors mean from different people, and then they would brainstorm off of somebody else's. And we didn't just have these 4 whiteboards. This is the 4th iteration of me taking the notes, putting them on the whiteboard for the next team to come in, and then them writing notes. So this was several times of this happening to just gather the brain power. It was just amazing to see everyone's input, and I was just really impressed with all of the brain power.
I'm just glad you're bringing it to us like this.
Yes.
You don't want all those?
Yeah, you don't want all the.
Thank you.
All right, so here's what the draft looked like. We have 4 main buckets or themes or categories: addressing facilities, improving student connection, retaining quality staff, and fostering community connection. So we'll speak to each of those tonight.
So, and the board does have it in front of them. So again, draft until the board approves it. The first one was address facilities. This came up the most often, and when the numerical data came back and in comments, this rose to the top as the #1 concern. School safety was by far people wanting to make sure we continued the district safety task force and that we made sure our schools were safe. Safe also in this case, people did address the not only safety vulnerability assessments that we're doing annually now, but also looking at any sort of deferred maintenance, unsafe or deficient areas that we have throughout our facilities. I spoke to that a little earlier in my superintendent report. There are some deferred maintenance that has happened over the years, just by the way that the funding comes to us, that we as a district need to look at. You will see in my recommendations later, I would really like for the board to be able to vote to start and not tonight, but to vote to be able to give permission to start a long-range facility planning committee, a subcommittee, and if it's a subcommittee of the board needs to be able to direct me to do that. I know you'll need to read through this in more detail, but feel free to interrupt us if you want to ask about anything as we're going through.
All right, next we have improving student connection. We want students to come in and feel engaged in the classroom or in the educational setting, whatever that might be, And so we want to ensure our academic program is student-centered. That might look like having additional career technical educational opportunities, increasing electives, increasing our flexibility in student schedules as we've begun to do. And then, of course, hopefully having some sort of relevance through internships and fieldwork and job shadows, much like Clark Fork High School exhibited tonight with their partnership in the community. Additionally, we want to address our issue with student attendance. And one way we can do that is by going down to number 2, right? Improving student well-being. If students feel like they're connected to the staff and students in their school, they're going to want to show up for school. If they have learning that's engaging, they're going to want to show up for school. And then we need to address whatever other barriers are there. Oh, and I want to mention, of course, maintaining rigor and supporting literacy for students. It is going to be our major objective to have every student graduate a reader. 100%.
And you'll see this is the second time that you see the One Trusted Adult initiative. It came up also in the earlier one about safety, and then it's coming up in student well-being as well. Several schools have already started this year with it, and there's several schools that have identified making sure that students are connected with one trusted adult, so they have somebody that they can talk to and trust. That's part of the Sources of Strength program we have, but it's actually rippling out into all schools. There's some really great activities that schools are doing where they have, and some, if people could eventually will be able to report on that. I just saw a report from one of the elementary principals. 100%, we met at every single student in this school that they know at different levels, not just that we know the student and recognize them, but we know their dog's name and what their parents are doing. You know what I mean? Like that kind of level of getting to know our students. So helps with that piece. Okay, the next one is retaining quality staff. As you know, we have an amazing staff in the Lake Pend Oreille School District. So how do we make sure and retain them here? The competitive salary and benefits is something that we have right now, so maintaining that and continuing with that trend. Hopefully also if Governor Little's proposal goes through, that the starting wage of a teacher in the state of Idaho will be brought up from 50th, 49th up a little bit. So we'll see how that goes in the legislative this session. Something that came up is really looking at staff satisfaction. That's the word that I put with it. What are the expectations? After the COVID was over, there really is a different environment in our schools. And it's not, I'm not saying it's bad, I'm not saying it's good, I'm not saying that, it just is different than it was. The expectations for attendance are different. The expectations for really connecting with students are different. And something that came up in the surveys over and over again is staff. If you can see here, number 5, staff is really wanting to know, how do we connect with students? This has to do with their attendance, with the way they're engaging with content now, has to do with some behavior we're seeing that's different, has to do with families saying, we may want to go to a family trip in the middle of the year. Way back when I was a principal and first started, that was like, oh no, you can't miss it. You have to do it around Christmas break, summer break, spring break. It just is a different world, and there are different, and this is not just in Lake Pend Oreille School District. This is happening throughout the nation. So I'm not saying that we're doing anything wrong, but we as a staff, the staff feedback is, let's really figure out, how do we connect with students? There's social media that wasn't there at the same level it was before. And the technology integration, graduation requirements, Kristen Hawkins just talked about internships, job relevancy. How do we get people out into the community and make learning relevant for our students? All of that connected together, increasing hands-on CTE experiences, is really important. So this piece about staff satisfaction, staff wellness as well, and creating cohesion. So some of the feedback, when you had the COVID going on, people did isolate. Families had isolation, student attendance was down, and it sounds like from the feedback that staff also isolated in their buildings, and the cohesion between buildings throughout content and grade levels, the cohesion went down, the connectedness went down a little bit. And I think we need the feedback that I saw in these surveys, we need to work to bring that cohesion back together again. Nothing bad, it's just a great feedback to start as a focal point moving forward. So really looking at those pieces, Of course, the reasonable class sizes, we do that because we have the support of that levy by our local patrons. So that helps us have reasonable class sizes. And then I just do not want this to fall through the crack, is the unfinished learning gaps. There are still unfinished learning gaps, and I did tell Andrea today, I really feel like I need to do more as a superintendent to help the staff identify those learning gaps and be able to fill those in with what skills did we miss because we had that COVID from March 2020 to the end of the year, and then there was intermittent attendance and intermittent on and off with people quarantined. And remember, we had 2 years of this going on and we had some just gaps in people's instruction. I was talking to some elementary with these data dives we just had with our principals. There are some missing gaps of 4th grade students where they missed some numeracy and factors, multiplication factors that they should know, that we're going to have to go back and help. And I don't think we've been given enough grace by the people that are looking at our scores throughout the nation, that this was a real crisis in our education, and we need to go back and address that. So I think as I need to do a better job of addressing that and helping our staff as we move forward.
All right, this fourth one is that we want to foster community connection. We want to continue this process of building relationships between schools and families and the district and the community and the businesses and the students, all of it. So we want to, we want to continue to communicate with a high level of transparency. This currently is achieved through superintendent reports, financial reports from the CFO, having an EduBlog, having schools report to parents about data and newsletters, which are an expectation for all schools. Number 2, frequent and effective communication, which we just talked about. That is like at least trifold, right? There are so many different ways that parents want to be reached out to, from the superintendent responding to emails that are personally written, or whether it be, my favorite is that she writes a lot of thank you notes to people by hand. Maybe some of you have received them, right? We want to hear from teachers regularly, and then partnering with parents. So one of the things that came back in the community feedback forum is one parent was really passionate about growing the volunteerism in our community, getting parents in the doors, because if they get in the doors, right, they see what's going on in the classroom. And if they see what's going on in the classroom, they grow this desire to want to serve or be more involved or help their kid read for 20 minutes at night because they see why it matters. And so this parent said, what if we got every parent in our community as an initiative to come into school one day with their kid? Like just one time, volunteer in a classroom or making copies or for recess, whatever it might be, right? And so that's kind of like a dream that's been inspired from my perspective. But additionally, having high quality parent engagement events offered at all schools. They currently are happening at least at title schools, but we're just starting to come back into this, where we are inviting parents back into the schools and hosting them for events. We want to develop and continue partnering with our community partners. This looks like partnering with businesses and nonprofit organizations who pour so much into LPOSD. When Mac was presenting tonight, he gave a list of people and organizations that are helping out with just 3rd to 6th grade. Like multiply that, tenfold, and we have all of the people who pour into Lake Pend School District. Additionally, we want to encourage and create opportunities for students to serve in local organizations. This was another big thing that came back after the feedback forum. Parents want to see their students involved in the community through volunteerism and seeing something bigger than themselves outside of the classroom, and using that as an opportunity to gain more understanding about, real world application to their learning. And then lastly, fostering a community use of district facilities, having that open door policy of, connecting with the community in that regard.
So you can see that current format. We have the outline view. It's not the pretty view yet. This is just the content. So our next format that we bring, this is just to give to the board for you to say, this is what all the stakeholders have given us. These are our themes. These are our 4 areas. And these are this is the what we will do and then how we will do it. We will make sure it has deliverables on it when it comes back to you. and make sure that it's measurable. But we wanted to know, first of all, any feedback that you have as we go forward, any research that you want me to do. I just wanted to give you just a few little things from my perspective before we go to you for feedback. I already sort of spoke to the unfinished learning gap. I just feel like that's one area that I really want to make sure doesn't fall through the cracks, that we address. And this is the first strategic plan. People like, and I was asked about it on the radio as well. It doesn't say we're going to increase student achievement, we're going to raise the test scores by this much, we're going to be the top in the state. It doesn't say anything in there specifically about student achievement. And I think after going through and reading all of this, this was not something that came from the stakeholders. I believe it's inherent, and it will come as an inherent outcome if we do all of this well. If we have safe, secure learning environments with facilities, make sure students feel connected to the school and their curriculum, and it's engaging, and they want to go to school. Staff feels valued, and they like teaching, they feel like they're connecting with the kids, and they're making progress with students. And then we have made this community connection, so it's a real robust partnership. Our entire community is working together. I believe student achievement and our growth for every single student will be inherent from the work we do with this strategic plan. And then I've already said about the long-range facility plan. So those are my just little 3 perspectives that I wanted to make sure that you heard. Thank you. We would like to know if you have any questions, and then any follow-up requests that you have for us to gather more data or information for you before we come back.
And I think one of my just first follow-ups you just touched on is prioritizing this. You know, this is just the huge download of community input, and then it would be good to see it in a, hey, this is a top area, this is a secondary area, you know, so that not everything on this list looks to me of exactly equal.
Right.
Importance.
Yeah.
Important.
Thank you.
And just so to address, these are in order of how it came back. So according to the stakeholders, address facilities was number 1, student connection was number 2, retain quality, and then foster. Those were the order, those overarching were the order.
And then that's another factor, and then I'll turn it over to the rest of you, sorry. You know, some of these obviously have budgetary implications. And so setting priorities and goals and what and how will also have to be rolled out in an appropriate measure with what we're able to look at budgetary.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know where that will factor into the what and how that you showed, but I'm open to other
I had a
comments.
question. I mean, you talked about as we achieve something, we'll kind of do it rolling system where that might fall off and we add something else to the strategic plan.
Yeah, the
Is that
next
kind of
year,
what you're
yep.
saying, right?
Yep.
So how does that look? Are we gonna try to put equal effort into all 4 of these? And then as they fall off, you know, that might be what falls off, or are we gonna put more effort in the top because that's what came in and hit that till we can achieve it and then move on? You know what I'm saying? Like, what's the idea there?
All 4 of them are super important, and all 4 of them are going to need our work. So if I look through everything that's on here, it's 5 years worth of work, but it's all doable to start some stuff next year. There are a few things there are some things that are low-hanging fruit that will be, let's do this and help meet the needs here. There's some things that are going to take it built into the budget, which when you have a set budget, what are we going to take off the plate to put something else on? For instance, an armed guard versus what are we going to take off if we're going to fund that piece? So those are just decisions that I'm going to have to make based on the feedback from the community of the priorities.
Yeah.
Do you feel like these are should be 5-year initiatives and goals like all the time? Like almost like these should never fall off of our
these four.
You know what I mean? Like, how would it work? Say we achieve 90% of foster community connections by bullet point, but then we don't want to ever stop doing that. So we don't want it to fall off and add one in there.
So that's when you're talking about here are the 4 areas, but here's the what. Like, here's the what we're gonna foster, but how are we gonna do that? And that might change every year because you may have something that comes up in the community. So at the end of the year stakeholder survey, I may get new information. And my goal would be every year to bring this back.
Yeah.
Hey, we have a high need to be able to have reading buddies. Like when Kristen talked about we're having the dyslexia legislation, we're having a literacy leader next year, and we're going to really be hitting that hard. Like the board will be hearing a lot about us working with literacy, data literacy, and literacy throughout our entire. We want every student to graduate a reader, and that's going to be a focus of ours. It was from the legislature. So you might see that really emphasized next year, and there might be some pieces that aren't as emphasized, and I will explain that to the board, like this is what I can do in the amount of time that we have.
So that would be the what, how, and the deliverable.
Yeah,
and
the
when we
deliverables.
roll it every year, we evaluate it every year.
Yep.
We re-adopt it, and it's this next 5 years.
Yep.
Taken in with whatever adjustments are.
Yep. And then I'll make recommendations to you, like annually doing a survey. Every single year I do a staff survey, and annually I do a parent survey. I will add in a stakeholder one on the website because the stakeholders are very involved in this community, so that everyone gets to give that input into, what do you want to see changed as we move forward and add on this additional year.
I only had 2 initial thoughts. When I reviewed this, I went back to the mission and our vision, and I was really pleased to see that, as you said, it's inherent, but all of these things directly will impact the mission and the vision. And so I felt there was really great cohesion. So that was great. The only other question that I had, and this is smaller, under retain quality staff, I'm wondering if we would want to have hire and retain quality staff. And the reason that I throw hire in with hire and retain is because when we're talking about increasing the number of substitutes, as well as when people do retire or change, I think that initial hire piece fits right in with that.
So, and
section.
I appreciate what you're saying, because some people had in recruit in there.
Yeah,
as recruit and
retain
retain.
is that phrase that's used
Is the
often.
word they, so.
Which is similar.
I'm not attached to any of the words if the board wants to add recruit or retain, hire and retain.
I always think of recruit as the action of going and finding the person. The hire is the actual
Hiring, yeah.
here's your offer and your beginning.
So if we do not have any other feedback right now, we will give this back over for their next set of massaging, because we will see it again at our next board meeting with the option to adopt it at that point or adopt it in April.
I did have a quick question before we do that.
Yeah.
Is this the time where we as a board discuss what we do or don't like or additions to this, or are we going to have something separate that they can, you know what I'm
I
saying?
think this is the time to look at those kind of high level areas.
I did have a question then.
Okay.
With and I don't know where it would fall, maybe under the retained quality staff portion, only because I've had multiple teachers, whether it was during the campaign or lately, even after I was elected, talk about CRT and not wanting it as, I remember talking to them at their door, campaigning, and like, what do you want from us as a board? And that was many, many times one of the top 2 or 3 things that they wanted to ensure that our district was not going to allow. Did that come up at all? First question. Second question, is it worth throwing in here along these lines or not?
Yeah. So something along that lines came up, and it was really about, the word extremism on both sides came up. Avoid extremism was a very common topic. And there was other comments as well. CRT, or also giving some individual freedom to teachers, came up several bit of time. I think if you look at the continue staff, right? No, it's not this one.
It's improving student connection.
It's in
Right here. Unbiased
right there. C.
curriculum tied to
1C.
Oh,
So how ensure balanced, unbiased curriculum tied to state content standards. So that was taking comments about not having CRT, not having extremism, Those were a lot of comments about extremism. It actually came out as a theme, and I just didn't like the word extremism. It didn't feel like it really captured what I thought we were trying to say. So ensure balanced, unbiased curriculum tied to state content standards, and maintaining rigor, high rigor, like we have really high expectations in this district, came up a lot. And then looking at the literacy piece. So I'm happy to have the 1C be changed in wording if people felt
Well, and I also want to be careful to keep this high level and not actually administrative practices.
Yep.
That these are a little bit higher level goals, so I don't want to dial down too deep, or you don't really have a strategic plan, you have a...
I mean, I like that is fine. I mean, I guess I missed it. That's where it was.
That's where that is.
Yeah.
What you're speaking to.
Yeah, and I mean, it's very, generic and high level, but it does tie into the state law. That was really my main question as we were getting to that, knowing, talking to teachers in the district. So,
Are there any other comments for them to go back to the board with? I guess I don't mean the board, the drawing board.
Yeah.
The whiteboard.
The whiteboard.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your
Anything
work.
else?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
this is exciting to see here.
Excited
All the
about
work
how
you've
we
done
get
on
this.
this.
This is awesome.
And I want to say, if we don't drive you guys away just with longevity of the meeting, we will freeze you out. I am sleeping.
I see people putting on coats and
I
come up and
know.
sweating and people
I'm pretty much gonna wear a hat and gloves next meeting. So, okay, we have two other quick things. You can leave if you have to, but we have two second readings of policy, and the first is policy 4175, second reading of required annual notices. You all have that in front of you. What do you have? Any comments as it's presented to you here? It's pretty straightforward.
this is under state code that we have to present this. Is that what this is? I can't remember.
So
Like this.
this was a synopsis for administrators to reference because all of these are required policies for them to notice.
Notice the parents.
And then the public would know, this is what we're,
This is
right
what
now,
I'm
this is
supposed
what
to
they,
say.
they're,
So they are required.
yes.
Yes,
Notice.
but
This
this
isn't.
particular policy,
Right.
It's putting it all in one spot. Is there any other questions on it? Typos, S's?
That's a different meeting.
So I will entertain a motion to accept this policy.
I make a motion to accept policy 4175, required annual notices.
All second that?
It's moved and seconded. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. We have a second reading. Policy 5265, employee responsibilities regarding student harassment, intimidation, and bullying. And you see in here the changes. We did look at this last meeting. You see the correction. Sorry, I'm having trouble
this
moving
is
my
a new
page.
policy, so the entire policy was.
And based on our discussion at first reading, an or was added. So we have seen it, it's been updated since then. Is there any other discussion on that policy? If not, I will entertain a motion.
There is another spelling thing. Sorry.
Curly's not here, so you have to be the editor.
Where?
Superintendent, or right under that it says requirements, policies, and procedures. There's a missing and.
Oh, add procedure.
Sorry. With that change, can we?
Absolutely. You make a motion to accept with that N.
I make a motion to accept this policy with the addition change of a ND.
Do you need to specifically list the policy, or does this policy count? 'Cause I'll second
This
that.
policy being policy 5265.
I second.
It's moved and seconded as amended. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes.
Good work.
It is a little late in the day, but are there any administrative announcements? What administrators survived? Oh, yes.
Way back. I would just like to say that we are very much missing our assistant principal, Barry Dickinson, and he's doing well and on the road to recovery, and we're very thankful that we have been able to teach Barry from part of his Southside duties to come in and help support us, and that's been very helpful. But we are definitely busy at Sandpoint High School, always been, especially so now. We're sending a big group to state tomorrow for girls basketball, and for the band's going to be going with them, and then our staff is also receiving our move secure defend training tomorrow. So that's kind of big things on my brain right now. So excellent.
And to add to Mrs. Brossingham's, Clark Fork High School is also sending their girls basketball, saving the taxpayer dollars. We are having the Clark Fork High School student athletes ride down with the buses. A bus was going to cost, one single bus from Clark Fork High School down to girls basketball state was going to cost $19,000. From Clark Fork to Boise. That, I could not in good conscience do that. So thankfully we had room on, yes, this is a true story. So thankfully we have room on Sandpoint High School, and then we are renting a minivan, which is okay by insurance, so that Casey McDonald, who you saw tonight with the heart vest on, he's the AD down there with Clark Fork, and he will be transporting folks around. Might take him a couple of trips to take the team, but at least we're saving the taxpayers $19,000, which I think is super important.
Thank you.
Yes, good call.
Yeah, good call. Yes, Principal Moore.
I can't hear you, my ears frozen. We just launched our attendance challenge. We were nervous about doing attendance for a while because of COVID, but we have really good attendance. We average about 98% daily attendance, but what we're really focused on is late arrivals, which we know in elementary school is not kids' fault, but just helping them encourage their parents to get them to school on time. We have 3 levels of prizes that can be won, and the first level is the school-wide challenge. If we average 80 or less late arrivals a week until spring break, we're going to have a teacher's bike parade in the hallways of that field. And so we're going to dress up all of our bikes and skateboards and whatever and do a bike parade in the hallway. And then I have a side deal too that I'll wear monkey suits. They just like me to wear costumes, so I made a side deal. And then our grade level challenge, if the grade level with the most attendance and daily arrivals, the lowest, we're going to have a dance party in the gym. Me and Mrs. Tired.
Wow.
And then the grade that wins, the classroom that wins, gets a donut and cocoa party.
Wow.
So we're trying to encourage kids to, and with that, we're educating parents on how many minutes missed equals this many days missed of education, and when we're trying to help with the gaps, like a lot of the kids that we need help with reading fluency, we have a boot camp for them from 7:30 to 7:55, and they're never on time, so they're missing their intervention.
You are not educating the parents on healthy snacks for our kids.
Wait, what do you mean?
Not important.
Donuts are good?
Our donuts are healthy.
Yes.
Yeah, full grain.
What?
And any administrative announcements from everyone? No. I like that it's Valentine's and you all came together. That was.
Yes, look at all these couples.
I know. That's really awesome. Okay, so with that, I will hear. Did I get everything?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll hear a motion to move into executive session.
I would like to make a motion that we move into executive session as provided for in Idaho Code Title 74, Section 206, subsection 1B, to consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining of, or to hear complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent or public school student.
I'll second that.
It's moved and seconded. Roll call vote.
Roll call vote. Trustee Sherman.
Aye.
Trustee Peters.
Yes.
Trustee Williams.
Aye.
Chair Lewis.
Yay.
Thank you. We're moving into executive session.
Okay,